Alright guys, TacticalRab back again today. Hope you're all doing well and enjoying your day so far. Welcome back to VALORANT rostermania. More teams getting leaked and potentially revealed going into 2023. The team that Zoms had in the tier 2 side will probably continue but without Zom services. And Dapr also mentioning the fact that players like FNS might well be forced out of the league in the next couple of years, given the fact that they're getting on a bit in terms of age. Very much intrigued to your thoughts in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always, I'd greatly appreciate it. Firstly, wanted to mention what's going on with T1. Of course, Sire player and others went to that team over the last few weeks. Really, we saw those confirmations finally come through. T1 are apparently returning to North America for a boot camp. So this is quite an interesting concept that we've seen other teams do in the past. We saw, for example, ahead of Champions and other events, really, teams flying out to, what was it, OpTic flew out to like Poland or something to boot camp and to scrim for a couple of weeks before they then flew to Istanbul for the World Championship, right? So teams have done this in the past. Sometimes boot camps can be where you actually get other teams to the venue, play on LAN with other teams. That's always pretty good. But just being in the general area and being able to play online with these teams is a good idea. Pretty interesting though, because maybe T1 feel like being over there in the Pacific region, in Seoul and around that area, is not maybe the best place for them to get their practice. They think their best practice will come from North America, coming back over to the States for, you know, maybe a few weeks, couple of months, whatever, get some best practice in against the best teams in North America, because there are a lot of talented teams in the Americas, and then go back to the Pacific region and try and take it to DRX, because maybe they feel like the discrepancy in talent in that region is more significant than it is elsewhere, and maybe they're right to think exactly that. Even Sire player here saying, you know, 43 kills in a scrim, all good. Maybe like, I don't know who this is against, maybe he saw this and thought, okay, maybe we've got to get some better quality of competition to practice against so they can actually, well, get ready as best they can for the upcoming season. Sad news, I suppose, from the guards to not have Sire player anymore, but understandable really that Sire was obviously going to get an offer from some sort of tier 1 team. Turned out to be T1 themselves from the Pacific region, but yeah, the guard will have to go on with Tex, we believe, formerly of NRG, will probably replace Sire in that particular role. Let's talk about these tier 2 sheets, and this is Flynn's latest spreadsheet, especially from the North American side, which looks as follows. The TSM situation to me is very interesting. So Sabros is probably gone, Rossi, GMD, Corey. I don't know about Rossi though, because people have said that he hasn't been really there for quite some time, and I would be surprised, honestly, if they kept Rossi, to be honest. Like, I feel like TSM could have done a better job with the roster they picked up here, because, you know, even that Nismo team, the former Ghost Corps that have been signed to this new organization, owned, we believe, by a former Exet top guy. We still don't know what the organization is called though. Like, maybe TSM could have tried to get those guys. So not really sure what's going on here. This could be still a little bit out of date, but Hayes has now been put in. There's been some rumors that Hayes is going to be going to TSM here. Makes a fair bit of sense. And, you know, I like what they're trying to do, but probably still a couple of changes away from anything pretty spectacular. G2, still the same. Penny, Oxy, ShahZaM, Whippy, and Dapr. I believe ShahZaM has actually mentioned that he's kind of going away for a week or so and going to do some sort of content announcement type stuff. So expect in the next couple of weeks to get some serious news about G2, ShahZaM, and the rest of the team potentially being a possibility. This also of note though, because Stewie2K's team that did have Raucus in, and then had, of course, Zoms in, he left, right? Zoms decided to retire, had enough of this, he was going to call it a day. So Stewie, Braxton, Wardell are apparently staying around. Raucus, we don't know. Rumors circulating that Raucus is going to go elsewhere and he's got something else planned for the future. And also, just while I remember, the name that was being linked to TSM was Nature, I believe, alongside Hayes. So I think that might be the case over there. But yeah, so this team still needs one with Exalt now in the lineup. But yeah, the Stewie2K Brax team with Wardell is still going to stick around, but they're going to need to round out their roster. And as I said, they're going to need to do so relatively quickly, because the qualifiers are probably not far away at this point, even though we still don't know exactly when they're going to be. So that's pretty much what's happening here in the North American side. Makes a fair bit of sense. But yeah, some of these guys, Hayes, you know, they're of course getting to the latter half of their career, you would well argue. And how could Wardell get on, right? Big personality within the scene. I saw there was a bit of drama between Wardell here and one of his moderators, because it's been quite a big talking point lately in the streamer world about whether pros or whether the streamers should pay their moderators. I think, like, if you're a top 100 streamer, you probably should. Outside of that, it's a bit of a tricky situation. Like, there's a few complications with it, really. And, you know, of course, like, it's work to a certain extent, but, you know, some streamers don't want to do it, which you can kind of understand as well. And even as Wardell says, you haven't worked in months and expecting compensation from me, lol. So, yeah, this is the thing as well. If you are going to try and pay your moderators, some mods are going to do way more work than other mods. So how do you make that work? Right? It's kind of a tricky one to decide. But yeah, Wardell is obviously not that happy about this one. You can't exactly blame him necessarily. This one was ShahZaM, just because to remind me to mention that yeah, I think he mentioned that there's something coming soon in terms of an announcement over the next couple of weeks. So stay tuned if that indeed does does come to fruition. Let's talk though about some of the older players in the league. Some of these guys are obviously, they've been around so long, they played Counter-Strike for decades, and now, well, not necessarily decades, but you know, CSGO came out in 2012, so they've been around that game for a long time. Now they come to VALORANT for a couple of years. How long is these guys' career lasting? Because how old can these players realistically get? As Dapr goes on to say here, the oldest player, I think in Counter-Strike, it's probably Carrigan, who I think is 32. There are older players though in VALORANT. So there's one older player in VALORANT, that is Angel, who is actually 33. We'll see here in a second. FNS is a relatively sprightly 30 years old. But yeah, this is always a conversation that comes up every so often. How old can players get and still be very good? Because we see in real sports, like more and more nowadays, older players are like continuing for longer into their late 30s, even into their 40s, like even, you know, Formula 1 and stuff. Fernando Alonso is like 41. You know, Brady obviously is like 45 odd at this point, and even, you know, tennis guys like, you know, Djokovic and even Federer and Nadal, like, you know, they're absolutely legends, but they've been around for so long at this point, right? And we see it around the world more and more often nowadays. Now, people talk about the fact that, yeah, your reaction time slows down. There isn't really like that much credible evidence and scientific backing for that. There was like one study done on like a very small sample over like like StarCraft or something ages ago that gives some indications, but it's not particularly valid. And many would argue that it's more of a function of the fact that the players lose the need to play at this level rather than they lose the ability to play at this level, right? And even Steele is kind of frustrated here, the fact that last season they didn't really do a good job at the VCT Open qualifiers, and he wasn't really able to push his limits or do anything last season. So Dapr talks about this and talks about FNS being basically the oldest guy in the league, and says that, like, he's 30 now, he's going to be pushed out in the next couple of years because he's just getting too old.
24 ain't even old. Pretty old in esports. I think the oldest player is FNS in Valorant, and he might be the oldest, even including CSGO. Who's the oldest? Has actually like tier 1 in CSGO. Kerrigan? 30 or something? 37 for Sentinels? No. They asked me to. FNS won 31 the major. Yeah. You see this, bro? They're both IGLs. Because they just IGL their team. Who's the oldest player that isn't IGL? 28 probably? FNS said he's done soon. He's done when he like has to be done. Like he gets forced out pretty much.
So this is FNS's profile. He's 30 years old now, so yeah, definitely on the older side of the players. But, you know, in other esports, things are different, right? In Counter-Strike, the players are generally older anyway. And then, you know, in other esports, like Rocket League, I imagine the players' age are probably pretty young, as with Fortnite and stuff. And then other esports are kind of more in the middle. Valorant maybe is more in the middle. Valorant is an interesting one, because you've got players like FNS, who are just like esports veterans, been around for like a decade plus, right? And then you've got some of these younger crack guys who are like 16, 17, coming on the scene. And often they're playing with each other, and it can be difficult, I think, for these guys to really get into the mindset of what it takes to be, you know, let's say you're a new player, you're 17, 18, you're teaming with like a 30-year-old. The mindset there, the communication between the two of them is very different, right? It's difficult to maybe get that across if you're the IGL, to maybe get into the mindset of these guys when there's such a massive age difference. And that, I think, is what can get quite tricky for these IGLs to keep up with the youngsters. But, you know, is their ability just fallen off a cliff, right? Because, yes, FNS and Angel, the two players that we're going to mention here, are probably in the entire league some of the, you know, the weakest aimers in the league, right? People were joking around what would happen if, you know, FNS versus Angel was like a 1v1 battle. To me, Angel is actually pretty nice with the sheriff and stuff. But, you know, still, it's always a conversation, and there might be a reason for that to a certain extent, but they're both phenomenal in-game leaders, which is what their teams need them to be. So, yeah, is Dapr kind of right to be on the lines of these guys are going to get pushed out? Because Angel's 33, he was born in 1989. Like, this guy's been around for so long at this point, Hellraisers, and now on to, well, FPX and now Na'Vi in the Valorant side. So, you know, yeah, these guys are going to stay, like, how long can Angel compete for? Can he go for another 3, 4, 5 years, right? I mean, that seems outrageous, but, you know, it might be possible. Is he going to push the boundaries in that sense? Or are his teammates and maybe younger players going to come up and say, this guy's like 35, like, get him gone, like, he's just terrible nowadays. So, yeah, I don't know, like, what is the perception of that within some of the younger players in the scene, but also what do the organizations think about it? Because if you've got a good IGL skill that can get the most out of your young, cracked out players, then it doesn't really matter how old they are theoretically, as long as they can communicate appropriately with players of entirely different generations almost. So yeah, intrigued your thoughts on that in the comment section below. Just to mention before we close out here, George Geddes talked about the idea of a VALORANT World Cup. I think Overwatch have done this in the past, and I hope that other esports would do it, because it's the perfect time of year, maybe not time of year because there's the actual World Cup going on, but just like in the off season between the finish of Champions and the start of next season, there needs to be something going on, and I think a World Cup would be a great idea. He talks here about, you know, Canada versus UK, the teams you could potentially form, and even I thought this from June, I thought it was pretty funny that the New Jersey team is actually pretty stacked. Bang, Stella and Zekan all from New Jersey, so yeah, apparently a pretty stacked squad, but of course, you know, maybe it would be a pretty cool idea. I think I'd love to see it, but hit the like button if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, take care, and I'll see you next time.